I'm here with epidemiologist Bonny Specker from South Dakota State University, who is going to talk to us a little bit today about COVID-19 and give us an update on what has been happening with COVID-19 in our world and in our region. We had a couple of questions come in this week, and Bonny, what were those questions? And let us know, what can you tell us about these things that people are wondering about?
Sure. One of the questions had to do with aerosols, which we'll get to, and the other one had to do with the age distribution. So I thought I'd go over a couple of the slides that are included in the daily updates. The first one, the question about the aerosols. The question was, our understanding of the virus has changed from worrying about surfaces to thinking about the ventilation of buildings. And should we be worrying about the ventilation system in buildings and whether they are just blowing air around that contains droplets or aerosols containing the virus? And I will admit right up front, I know aerosols is not my area of expertise, but I thought I could sort of get into the literature a little bit and try to find some things. And I do have links to some of these articles that I think you'll be posting, Chelsea, under the video. There was a particular article that talked about like the differences between aerosols and droplets. And essentially it has to do with the size of the particle. So droplets are larger, aerosols tend to be smaller. And they can spread a lot further, and they tend to be airborne for a longer period of time. And this article also talks about aerosol versus droplet transmission with respiratory viruses, in particular with COVID or SARS-2 virus that causes COVID-19. They talk about three possible mechanisms. One of them is self-inoculation after contact with droplets that settle on surfaces. So the droplets have more moisture, they fall, and then you can touch those particles and then, touch your face. That's why they're always telling you not to be touching your face. Or you can have direct deposition or inspiration of those droplets where you inhale them, and there, because the particles are larger, they'll pretty much stay in your mouth and nose area or maybe in your eyes, and then the virus can move from there. The third one is the airborne transmission with inhalation of aerosols, and this is more concerning because it can go deeper into the lung. So if the virus is on an aerosol or is in aerosol form, it could make it down into the lower parts of the lung. The aerosol transmission, they also talk about this depending upon several factors. One is the aerosol and droplet behavior. This is what gets way out of my area of comfort. And then also indoor airflow is the flow circulating a lot, which would tend to keep the aerosols in the air longer. And then they also talk about various virus and host specific factors. But they do conclude saying that the role of aerosol transmission for respiratory viruses does remain controversial. And I think I got the impression from the literature that there's a lot being done on this. There's a couple epidemiological studies. One of them I think people might be familiar with was the restaurant, where they actually had the map of the tables where people sat and how so many people at each of these tables became infected, with the idea that maybe it was a result of an aerosol. But I do think that that data is still out there as far as how important it is. And I think it's emphasized by the CDC website on September 18th. They did have a paragraph, and this is a website that talks about how COVID-19 is spread. And they acknowledge the possibility of aerosol transmission. And if that is true, then it would support the need for good ventilation systems in buildings, as our listener was asking about. But that's a Friday, September 18th. On Monday, that paragraph was removed from the CDC website, and it was replaced with the following statement: a draft version of proposed changes to these recommendations was posted in error. The CDC is currently updating its recommendations regarding airborne transmission of SARS-CoV-2. And once this process has been completed, the updated language will be posted. Moving to age, there were a couple slides in the daily updates that I'd like to go over and just explain to people so that they in the future can look at these slides and understand them a little bit better. Here we have a slide on the percent of the South Dakota population ever testing positive by age. And you can see that the highest is in the 20 to 29 age group, where 4.8% of that age group tests positive. It's like, well, how did I come up with that number? The way these are calculated is the Department of Health dashboard gives us how many people are testing positive by age, by these age categories. Then I take the South Dakota population from 2017. That's the most recent estimates that the Department of Health uses. And I simply look at how many people are in South Dakota within this age group, the 20 to 29, and I divide the number of cases divided by the population size. And that's how I come up with this 4.8. The next highest group is this 30 to 39 year age group at 3.8. The way you read this is, say for here, 3% of the South Dakotans aged 50 to 59 have tested positive for COVID. Now, this is important when people talk about the herd immunity, which we covered a couple weeks ago, because for herd immunity to occur, you need to have about 80% of the population immune to this virus. That's what they've estimated. You can see that our highest age group is at about close to 5%, say. This would have to get up to 80%. And we know that from studies in Iceland and Italy, about 40% of cases are asymptomatic. So we'll just say half to make it easier. At the most, 10%, using that rationale, 10% of the 20 to 29-year-olds in South Dakota have been exposed to COVID, if you assume that about 50% of them are asymptomatic and don't know that they've been infected. So in order to get to that herd immunity, we would have to have an extremely large number of people get sick. I mean, out in these age groups, you know, it would have to be a significant number that would have to become ill. The other thing that we can look at when we're interested in age is the Board of Education information. This is posted on the Department of Health dashboard every Monday. These are today's results. And the yellow lines represent K-12. So this is the whole state of South Dakota. Here we have students with the pink markers are the students. And here we have the staff with the red markers. So yellow lines, K-12, blue lines, higher ed. And you can see that the slope of this line it's increasing much more rapidly than the higher ed. So the spread of cases is much more rapid in these younger K through 12 grades. The other thing that I think is important to realize is the high number of staff among K-12 that have become infected. Here is about half the number of students, Whereas in higher ed, it's a much lower number of staff compared to students. And that's probably because of the way interactions, I'm guessing that it's the way the staff interact with the students. I think K-12, the teachers are in closer proximity to the students and they're more, dealing one-on-one with some of the students compared to what you see in higher ed. And then here's some data, and this looks a little bit messy, but I'll try to walk it through. It's got a lot of information here. We have requested from the Department of Health information on the age distribution of Brookings cases. And we've done that at 3 times. The first time was back in September 14th. They told us this was the age distribution. So the majority of the cases were in that 20 to 29 year age group. And then 10 days later, we asked them again, they supplied this information to us. So you can see how things have changed. This age group, the 10 to 19-year-olds, actually went up quite a bit there, just looking at the size of the blocks. And this is the age categories down here. Essentially, you're starting with the youngest at the bottom and going up here where you're at the 80 plus. So we got this information last week. So if we want to look at what's happened back here 2.5 weeks ago on September 14th to now, this is the percent increase in the different age groups along with the number of new cases in that 2.5 week period. Now you can see here 70 to 79-year-olds had a very large percent increase, but that's because back here there were only 7 of them. Now there's 17. So there was an increase of 10, but it was a large percent because there were only 7 at baseline. But if you look down here in the 20 to 29 year age group, this is where the actual number of cases has increased the most, where we've gone from 365 to 427 cases. That's 62 cases in the last 2.5 weeks, but it's only a 17% increase because this is such a large number to begin with. So you can either look at it as percent increase or you can look at it as absolute numbers. So this is the highest group. The second highest group is this 10 to 19 year age group, where in 2.5 weeks we've had 59 new cases. This is in Brookings. So it's a large increase, and you can tell from the size of this box where it's going from 82 up to 141. The third largest is this 30 to 39 year age group, where we've had 31 new cases. Whether these are the parents of these, I don't know. I don't know if Department of Health knows that, but I think you could speculate that maybe this increase is due in part due to these increases in the children. And those younger ages, it's important to remember that recovery from COVID can take a long time in these young adults. The CDC came out with an article, this MMWR is Mortality and Morbidity Weekly Report. And they talk about how long it takes for younger people to recover from COVID. And they find that 1 in 5 previously healthy young adults weren't back to their usual health 2 to 3 weeks after testing positive. So they were still ill from COVID. So to stay well, we need to do that 6 feet, social distancing, wash hands often, and wear face coverings consistently and correctly while in the public.